Hello, all. Welcome to that InboxArmy podcast. I'm your host, Scott Cohen. With me, as always, is my co host, Garen Hobbs. Hey, Garen.
Great to be here again with you, Scott. Excited for today's topic.
Yeah, I'm super excited about our guest. We're going to be talking subscriptions today. The world is awash with subscription businesses, whether it's food delivery, software, fashion. I mean, the boxes that show up at my door for my wife, who knows, right? But subscriptions are big business, and they're largely driven, nurtured, and emailed and maintained by email, SMS, and for those folks who are app based, push and in-app messages as well. And with that subscription, of course, comes the challenges of establishing initial value and maintaining ongoing value. And when Garen, you and I were talking about this topic, I was like, there's one guy I need to talk to, one name that comes to mind, and that is our guest today, Matt Holman. Matt Holman is the founder of Commerce Catalyst and Subscription Prescription. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate that, Scott and Garen. Glad to be here. Glad to be talking about subscriptions with you, especially I think in my work and my consulting, email is often overlooked. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into that with you guys today.
Oh, preach, brother. Email is, I say, it's the offensive lineman of marketing, because nobody cares about it unless something goes wrong.
Email is, how many times have we heard email is dead, but long live email.
When I first started in email 15 years ago, I believe the New York Times was saying that email was dead. So, long live email. But before we get too deep into subscription, I'd love to dive in a bit about your journey. I love learning about people's journeys. I'm an East Coaster who ended up in Utah, and I get the question all the time, why Utah? And it's like, it's a journey, right? Life's a journey. Why don't you, I'd love to hear a bit about how you ended up where you are now and spouting truth about subscriptions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a somewhat of an atypical journey. There's not a lot of people that are active in the space that are vocal about some of the past and background. And, I'm actually formerly incarcerated. That's one of the things that I think the last couple of years I've been trying to be a little bit more, I wouldn't say necessarily vocal about, but trying to share the fact that there are normal people that have been incarcerated that have made pretty bad mistakes and tried to, change their life and do better by them. So that's definitely part of my story. So I was out here in Utah. I grew up in California, was out here in Utah, and was incarcerated for quite a while, actually for almost 15 years. So for me, my professional career didn't really start until I was 37. And that was when I was released. I went back to school. I picked up some training and signs and printing when I was incarcerated. So that's a lot of the work I did for the first couple of years. And kind of my first gig was running some marketing and e-commerce stuff for a small local, well, it was small at the time. It's grown considerably since I was there, called eHub in the e-commerce space, doing e-commerce shipping. So logistics and rates for e-commerce companies. And very much of like my journey, I joke that I identify with kids that are just getting out of college or people that are having to restart their career, whether they've just got out of the military or, out of maybe a bad relationship or something like that, because I'm very much still like just trying to figure out who I am in the world in the sense of like a professional career. But for me, I've cared deeply about education and empowerment for a really long time. It's something that's helped my life. And while I was incarcerated, saw it change the lives of hundreds of people around me. And so for me, that's been a big deal. That's how Commerce Catalyst got started, was wanting a group where people could come together and ask questions and get resources related for marketing and e-com. And then once I was at eHub, I wanted to kind of continue to spread my wings and went the entrepreneur route. Was the co-founder of a subscription app called QPilot. My partner there, David Bradley, had first started the company. When we got to know each other and learn my story, just really embraced my drive and passion, and has been an incredible supporter of me. And we started Subscription Prescription while I was there because we wanted to create a newsletter and an information resource that was a little bit different than what you might get from QPilot. So the idea is like, nobody wants to go subscribe to QPilot's newsletter, but maybe you want to go subscribe to Subscription Prescription's newsletter, which really was based off of all of our learnings from our couple hundred of customers. And then over the last few years, I've had so many deep insights and dives into different programs, data systems, what works, what doesn't. And there's a long list of all of those things. There's never really one thing in any company. And so subscription prescription is really this kind of like full my own journey of wanting to step fully into being able to help and realizing that for me, selling SaaS is great, but where my real passion and talent lies is working directly with someone to help them understand what's going on, something complex that I understand very, very well. So I have a ton of subscription experience. And I think what makes it a little bit different is my ability to kind of see like that whole picture of how it influences different pieces of the business, understanding what a business can offer, but what a customer might actually want to buy. And those, because that's often, hopefully not too much of a gap, but sometimes a really big gap. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Again, like my background is something we could talk about for maybe too long, talking about life and philosophy and the road not taken or how
we get time at the end, we might come back to it.
But yeah, that's definitely how I got into it. And yeah, so subscriptions, it's something, and I'm still continuing to want to build out I'm working right now on a subscription operating system that brands will be able to implement as part of our content and consulting and stuff too.
I think there's a hunger, and we were talking about this before we came on air a little bit, like there's a hunger for the nuts and bolts of operating, right? Like there's just that hunger there that if you separate it from the SaaS element, people are really keen on. I found that when I started writing about email when I was brand new into the space, I was brand side. And so having a brand side, how do I do this tomorrow with what I have on hand?
Right.
People loved versus, oh, here's how you do it in X platforms. Like, no. I just want like, it's more conceptual. It's more nuts and bolts pieces, like I said. So love it.
That's exactly what we found is with the newsletter. When we started it, we were getting like initially we thought, oh, we're going to create this newsletter as a lead gen source and stuff, which is what a lot of people do. But we kept getting questions from people that were not interested in switching their platform. And then it was kind of like, you have to take a step back and realize, okay, well, I can keep creating something of value, but it's not going to be to get them to buy QPilot. It's going to be, if there's the right use case, it'll be obvious because of that education. But otherwise, we just want to try to educate and empower and help people figure out, like, regardless of what platform you're using, how can you build a better experience that's going to make you more money?
And welcome to why we do the podcast.
Exactly.
Well, let's dive right into subscriptions. As I mentioned in the intro, it's like you could throw a rock and hit 3 subscription businesses these days. When we were talking about the questions to put together, Garen and I, we were discussing there's really kind of 2 sides to the subscription model coin. There's sort of the active subscription model and the passive subscription model. What are your thoughts on that and sort of the inherent challenges of each?
Yeah. So when we're talking like, and I guess maybe just to clarify a little bit, when you say active versus passive, are you talking about one where people are just like something that goes on in the background that they don't ever think about versus one that's like regular engagement? Is that kind of how you're breaking it down? Or how would you define active or passive?
Here's a great example. So when I think of passive subscriptions, to your point, I think of things that just sort of happen on a regular basis. A subscription box, for example, that's rather passive. It comes to you every month, and hopefully I enjoy the products that are in this month's box. When I think of an active subscription, I'm thinking more of those that depend entirely upon my interaction, right? Strava Runkeeper or Strava's Runkeeper, maybe Calm would be another good one, or something like New, where the real value is contingent entirely upon my input and my regular interaction with the subscription.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it really comes down to like understanding the difference between like I think like if we think back to like you think about business school, the quality wheel, like the idea of like you can either have a low price, you can either have it really right away, or you can have it low quality. Like you can pick 2, but you can never have 3 between those 3 things. And so when we're talking to subscriptions, this is the way I've been thinking about it a lot lately as well. When you think about that, is like you're trying to think of through like which pieces of this am I getting? So like the Strava one is a great example because I recently had Strava, like I saw the renewal notice and realized I haven't used the app in like 2 months, right? Because I was using it when I was riding a bike, but I don't use it when I run. I just use the workout app on my watch when I do that, or Nike Run on when I do that. And so I go and cancel it, right? As opposed to like, a really great passive example is, both active and passive is probably Amazon Prime. So you think about it, like the passive piece is you kind of forget that you're getting like the shipping options, like the same day, next day delivery, You're getting some of that priority stuff. But then when you access, like, say, like the catalog of like content and media, like that's a lot more engaged in the sense. Or if we're talking about SaaS subscriptions, right? Like, you're recording on StreamYard. StreamYard uses has an active subscription piece. They're going to keep charging you whether you use the features or not, but it behooves you to be able to use that. And from StreamYard's perspective, and this is kind of where I'm kind of getting all of that, is they're trying to create a system where they can get you using the platform, but then depending on who you are, they can lock a couple of features at higher tiers to try to get more money out of you. And when I talk about subscriptions, I think sometimes we get lost in the weeds of like thinking, oh, I just want to build up recurring revenue. I just like, how great would that be if I can just predict and plan? And I'm making 50,000 a month off these subscribers. So I can now, do financial modeling and all my pro formas are going to be accurate, and reliable. That's why everybody likes the idea of doing them. But the disconnect is like, how do you drive value for somebody? So like the subscription box is a good example. It's surprise and delight. They're completely and totally reliant on making you feel like when you open that box, it's amazing. And then when you think about the fact that you're going to get billed again, you're going to think that it's worth it. But they're totally reliant on that single touch point. So like we have a Crunch Lab subscription box. And so when that box comes, my 10-year-old is like freaking out. When Christmas came around, he's like, hey, because he got Crunch Labs as a present for the previous year. I don't have to have that as a present again. I can keep getting it, right? Like he's very much interested in it, right? But so the problem though is like you come down to a very, very single touch, like a very narrow window touch point of where people are evaluating the worth of the subscription. Is this moment or the stuff that I'm getting, like BattleBox is a great example. They're an amazing subscription box. They're sending you all this outdoor gear. You might get $300-400 worth of gear for your $100 or $150 box. Is that worth it to you to keep doing? The difference with something like Strava or StreamYard or something that maybe is a little bit more active is you often don't have to win as often. It's more about like, this is a tool, this has utility. You might only use it once a month. Like if you only used Strava once on the weekends and you were riding 4 times a month, it still might be worth the $10 a month to be able to track and share rides with your friends and things like that. So it's much more like, and so it does come down to like understanding like where your value is. And I would say, as I'm just kind of like rambling on and on about all this, is the trick for any great subscription business is trying to unpack the fact that this is the value I give to the average subscriber, but what kind of experience or tier or offering can I put that's going to be elite for a smaller subset of my subscribers that are going to be willing to pay me more, engage with me more? They're the one, it's the Pareto 80-20 rule. They're the ones that are going to be driving 80% of your revenue, 80% of your product development. That's kind of should be always the mission we're thinking subscription is, what value can I offer? And once I'm offering that value out of that group, how can I get more value from the people that need it the most?
It's a great lead into sort of the next question here, right? Subscription brings this concept of the ongoing or perpetual transaction, which is great. To the points you sort of alluded to, a lot of the business advantages of the commercial advantages of that. The opposite side of that is that it's also a continual sale, right? With the customer always having their finger on that trigger of cancellation, right? What are some thoughts about creating and driving proactive value rather than necessarily leaving it upon the customer to discern that for themselves? Here's a couple of great examples. You already gave the great one with regards to things like Strava. But let's say one of these clothing subscription boxes, right? I pay for the subscription. They curate sort of a outfit or an ensemble for me that month. They send it to me, and I either like it or I don't. If I don't like it and I choose not to buy the clothes and return them, what was the value for me in that particular month, right? How do we keep that perception of value high proactively?
Yeah, absolutely. And a great example is Fresh Clean Teas has a subscription box. So they sell. But what's interesting is like they've identified there's 2 kind of core users. So if you can imagine, they're just selling a t-shirt subscription. That's it. It's not that complicated, not that sophisticated. The difference though is they've got 2 types of customers. They got the guy or girl that just wants to wear black t-shirts all the time. And so they run through them and they fade out. And so they just want to make sure they're getting new t-shirts every month or every couple of months. They just swap them out. And then there's the other person who's like, I just want to get different colors. This blue looked cool. I'm going to keep wearing these, and I get some new ones and they're different colors, and I want variety, right? So their whole thing is the value prop they're trying to get into is like, people need t-shirts. So we're selling to some people that want convenience, as in they're getting the same color over and over again. And we have some other people that have a little bit more value around variety. Okay. So that's a very, very simple example. But as we can build on that as an example, right? Like, can I make the convenience side that much more convenient, where instead of like the shipment comes every 6 weeks, I'm emailing you or sending you a text message every 3 weeks to see if you need to get your order sooner or not, because I know you value convenience. But the person that wants the variety, I don't want to message them that much, because they might just get reminded of the fact that maybe they don't really need that. Maybe I catch them on a bad day. They're like, you know what, I could buy those at Target. I don't need that, or something like that. It should be more about like, hey, when it comes time for your order to renew, like, here's all the new colors, and go and pick the 6 you like the most. And so like that way you're like delivering a little bit more on the value of variety than you are just, I curate it for you and send it to you, right? So it's like, that's kind of like what happens in the subscription space is you can try to find ways, if you understand what people value from you, you keep building it. And so another great example is Dollar Shave Club. For anybody who's not watching the video, I am bald. I've had a Dollar Shave Club subscription since like 7 years now, basically since I got out of prison. And I should add that my 10-year-old, in case anybody's doing the math at home, is my stepson. So in case anybody's trying to do the timeline of how I've been around. But Dollar Shave Club is 100% convenience, and I like the quality for the price. I have never bought an upsell. I have never, they send me samples. I've literally never tried any of their samples about anything. When they update their razor and they sent me a new thing, it shocked me because I had no idea, because I'm not paying any attention to that. But the thing that I love is that anytime I want to manage the frequency or cadence that I'm getting at it, it's super customizable. It could be like every 5th Tuesday. It could be every 7 weeks. I could get, so that's what I've done. I love it. They've had me for almost 7 years now as a subscriber. But there's plenty of other people that love the other side of it, which is we're a total grooming resource. You've got your beard trimmer and your razor and your aftershave and your lotion and a mirror and a dating guide and all the, I'm joking on that other thing, but they're leaning into that. So ultimately that kind of comes down to understanding what kind of value do I want to build for somebody? Is it like a set and forget? Like, my subscribers just like knowing I give them what they want when they want it, and that's it. So I'm just going to keep trying to make sure that's smooth. Or if it's, I want the more things out of it. Like, again, StreamYard is a great example. Is if you're a podcaster, to deliver value on that subscription, they're going to have to stay on top of product development, the quality of recordings. Maybe there's a new feature where it's like an auto emoji, or being able, other apps, platforms are rolling out, clipping and AI editing and things like that, trying to make your life easier so they can offer more value. So the subscription means more, but also so that they can try to get you to a higher tier.
So, I mean, that constant value, then that's how you reduce churn, right? So what goes into,
I wouldn't say constant. I wouldn't say it's constant. It should be
or proper value. Yeah. So understanding value, understanding churn. What goes into understanding churn?
I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to, is what does somebody need, or right? So if you were to cancel your StreamYard subscription, a couple of common reasons might be, I no longer have a podcast. I found a better tool, or I found a tool that does the same thing at a cheaper price, right? That's going to be the top 3 reasons for their cancellations without looking at their data. And that's how it is for most subscriptions. It's going to be, I either have too much of it, I don't need it anymore, or I don't see as much value as I used to. And so you can't really tackle all of those things all at once. But the idea is, if you instead, this comes back to this whole core value idea, is StreamYard could probably survive if they got rid of everybody off their lower tier, if they could get 10% of them to upgrade to the highest tier. It's the same amount, probably the same amount of revenue, depending on their user base. So you try to want to start to understand what people are getting out of it, what they see about it. I think the other thing with subscriptions is understanding expectation. And I harp on this all the time. It's like, if you had a gym, if you were owner of a gym and you were selling gym memberships and you started marketing that your gym membership would like cause people to lose more weight than they could at any other gym, but then people came in and that didn't happen because there's nothing you're doing other than offering equipment like what everybody else is doing, people are going to leave because you've essentially lied to them. But that seems like a really extreme scenario, but that's actually what happens. It's like, hey, this is the cleanest shave you're going to get. This is like the cleanest dog food. Like your dog's going to start growing hair back. Like the businesses are making promises, or even if you're not making a promise, there's an implied or assumed promise that a customer has coming in. So some of the things I recommend to all my clients and everybody in my content is like, do more surveys for when people are coming in to understand not just where they came from and why they bought, but what are they expecting? What are they hoping for? What has them excited? Because if you can understand that, and then you start marrying that with like what's going wrong, then you can build a better product or onboard them better or like communicate the value in a different way. And that can have both. And so you look at churn to understand like what's going wrong or what could I do better? So like, again, coming back to StreamYard, if StreamYard is saying like, hey, we're leaving to this other, we found a better solution. Well, hopefully there's a little dialogue box that pops up that says, it's okay, well, where are you going? Or what was the feature that pulled you away? Now StreamYard's getting feedback for, oh, we should build that feature. We're going to combat churn if we have that feature available. And that should be the mindset of like, I'm trying to figure out why people like it and why people don't like it at both the buying and the cancellation process, so that I could try to understand what's happening like throughout and market. And once you know that, it becomes in many ways like really, really simple. And like, I don't know if you want me to keep going this, but I have a really great example of that is,
I was just about to say StreamYard's getting some great free strategy on what Garrett and I like to call Free Strategy Friday. So yeah, go on.
So Mixers is a Utah company. They're an amazing company that's selling a variety of things, but their flagship product is Her Time. It's a hormonal supplement for women to help them manage like their period and things like that. So they, like a typical subscription process, you sign up, you get this product in a subscription, and most products, the first couple of months you have high rates of churn you go through. And they were trying to figure out, how do we get people to stick around longer? And a really common approach in almost every subscription on the planet is like, we're going to give you a discount or a gift or something. Okay. It's very common. It makes sense from a business standpoint, like why you might try that. But this is just from an hour strategy session, is understanding what was going on throughout the whole subscription. And the more that I dug into what they were saying and they were telling me was, the reason that a lot of women were canceling is because they were either skeptical. They were skeptical about the product because it's new-ish. They got a friend that tried it, or they listened to the podcast or saw an ad, but they've never taken a supplement to help manage hormones before. Or they just didn't know. So they're skeptical that would work, or they had like, how long does it take to work? Should I feel something today? Should I feel something next month? And so once you kind of lay it out there on the whiteboard, it's just, I wish I could have just like filmed that moment of like, okay, well, why would you want to give somebody a discount then? Why would you want to give them a gift? They're not using the product.
Yeah.
So why not just invest a little bit in like educating people on how it's going to make them feel, how long it takes to see changes. And so they implemented just like UGC inserts and some other things, and their month over month churn dropped 40%. Wow. Inside of just a few months. Just because they start, and again, I like to joke that a lot of my work is just helping people connect the dots. Like, I'm not like, revolutionizing. I mean, I'm trying to revolutionize, I guess, in a small way. So I should say that. But the idea is like, once you understand that, oh, really, a lot of and they were telling me this. It's not like I was like reading the data. I was just asking them questions. They're like, oh, yeah, we have a lot of women who don't think it's going to work. They're skeptical of it. Well, how is a little swizzle stick or like a gift card going to make them feel like the product's going to work? It's not. Oh, okay. Well, why don't you try this? And then that's what ends up happening is the more you understand what's going on and you can take a little bit of a step back, you'll be able to craft an experience that works for your subscribers.
Yeah, I know I mentioned Calm a short while ago. I feel like they've done a really great job at that, right? When you're onboarding, they're asking you specifically, what are the reasons you're looking to meditate? And then the alerts that they send out, rather than just saying, hey, it's time to meditate. Don't you want to meditate? Take 5 minutes to meditate. They're tapping it into that specific reason. Maybe it's to get a better night's sleep. Maybe it's to reduce stress. And now so the alerts become, be sure to get your best night's sleep tonight by taking 5 minutes to meditate. So they're tapping into that inherent intrinsic motivation rather than trying to drive folks to what otherwise might feel like an unnatural emotion, right? Kind of keeping them focused on the benefits.
And that is what I'm pushing the email community inside subscriptions to do more, is if you can collect a post-purchase survey of the top reason why you bought this product, you can segment them on an upcoming order to say, hey, you bought this for weight loss. Hey, here's your weight loss miracles on the way. Oh, you bought this because you're training for a marathon. Like, hey, your training buddy is on the way. Like, it's so simple and yet so fundamental, like understanding the value people have. And being able to remind them why they bought it in the first place. So I'm going to have to check Calm out because I haven't subscribed to that before, but I really, really like that. And I've been trying to do more research into those kind of digital subscriptions. Because for me, the ideal scenario would be one where you can marry that kind of communication and engagement with a physical product so that there's like a regular consumption, right? Like if you wanted to do a weight loss app that had a physical supplement kind of thing, right? There's some that are out there doing it, but I haven't seen one that marries both of them together really, really well.
Yeah. It's a great point. I regularly encourage all of my email clients as well to do the same thing, whether they're a subscription based, whether they're just standard retail e-commerce. Folks are hungry to self-identify. Ask them why they're driving, and then let's put everything into the context of that and reflect that back.
Absolutely.
Being that this is an email marketing podcast, let's shift things over to email and more broadly, I guess the marketing channel mix, right? Mobile app, et cetera, that's typically involved in maintaining and nurturing these subscriptions. So Matt, in terms of channel mix, where do you see the greatest success? All businesses are different. Some folks have apps, some don't. But on average, what does that most successful channel or optimal channel mix really look like?
Yeah, apps is, I think in many ways is the ideal place to go if you're close to that. If you're in the the Shopify ecosystem, you need to be using like Tapcart or Shop2 app to try to create like a mobile app experience for your customers. But if you're building something like a gym membership or, a meditation app or something like that, like it makes a lot of sense because that's where you can have some of the strongest like retention and engagement and an ability to deliver value. But really it's still email. I think, we were joking about, email is dead and, long live email. I think that I remember SMS when it was not first coming out, but like, first being adopted more heavily, like 4 or 5 years ago, very much into especially the e-commerce ecosystem. And everybody's like, this is the future. And it's much tight for a variety of reasons. It has not supplanted it. It's works well in tandem, but for subscriptions, a lot of brands have pulled back on SMS marketing, I should say, because they have found that it like just triggers churn. It's like, hey, your upcoming order's on the way. Click here to cancel or click here to make a change. And then people go and do it. Whereas, and that again, part of the problem is SMS is so limited in what you can put in like a text and how many links. Whereas opposed to an email, you can put all kinds of customization and storytelling and show them what's in their order and remind them why they bought it. And here's some upsells and like, here's some quick links. Instead of trying to get you to go over the portal, if you want to skip an order, here's a click link inside the email. So it like very, very like simplifies the customer experience. So I would say like that email has to be a part of it. SMS should supplement it in more of a way of like letting people know about special offers or new product drops, something like that, at least as far as subscribers go. And then the app experience, there's some really cool things that are happening where people are like the ability to control your subscription or see your loyalty points and redeem them within the app, that kind of thing. Unless you're actually building like an app-like experience where you have to, the value is in the app itself, not a physical product. So that's kind of how I would think about it. Email needs to be 100%. If you can do SMS or the app stuff, then that's good too. But you have to have email going. And most of the brands I talk to there's still a lot of opportunity there. There's a problem in e-commerce where a lot of brands they'll separate their subscribers and they won't email blast them. They'll only email blast one-time purchasers or people on their list. They leave subscribers alone because they're worried about sparking churn instead of trying to. And so a lot of what my education is take a step back from that. Why don't you just craft an offer that works for the subscribers first? They're the ones buying from you already. They trust you the most. then make a version of that for the one-time purchasers, and then make your opt-in option for people that haven't bought from you anymore, because it's not really happening a lot. As well as opportunities around like onboarding. That's a massive opportunity that a lot of brands are missing, where you bought something new. I think SaaS platforms are really good at this. Like I'm sure Calm has an amazing onboarding sequence of emails you get that shows value or something like that. I could probably safely assume that. And a lot of SaaS companies, like if you sign up for StreamYard, you're going to get for probably 2 or 3 weeks podcasting tips and how to activate this and how to invite guests and how to market your like all those things. But then if you order like a physical product, like a life-changing supplement, your order's on its way. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's that fear piece, right? I mean, I've worked with clients where they go, we don't want to remind people that they have a subscription, because they want to be, because real. I mean, you hear about it all the time that gyms don't actually want people showing up. They just want people paying $10 a month and not using the service, because that's where they make their money, and it's cynical, unfortunately effective. But that's what they go. But I think to your point of getting that offer for the subscribers, like there's nothing worse than cell phone companies who give their best offers to new customers and not to the people who've been with them for 10, 15 years.
Right.
Like you should be courting me to keep me. Right? And they don't do that unless you start yelling and scream. I mean, how many times have you called the cable company and been like, I'm leaving. Okay, we'll give you half off for 3 months. Well, why aren't you just leading with that? I've been around forever. So I just don't. Yeah. Anyway. All right. You mentioned a few of these already, but who's doing subscriptions right these days? Who are your favorites? And you can toot your own horn if you want.
Well, I mean, I think they're an awful lot. I did mention like BattleBox early on. I think one thing I love about them is they did a retention program for their like 100th box, where they had a kind of like golden ticket scenario where they picked 5 or 6 winners to come out to Texas and shoot tanks as like a prize. But the thing that I really loved about it was they didn't use it as a marketing tool. They actually secretly made a cutoff for anybody who's a subscriber from this point on is entered into the contest. And then they let all those people know. So that was like a great retention play. And they're always trying to find value and source products. They have amazing content. I think Athletic Greens is another really good one. They just do a great way of like from product and understanding what consumers want and communicating and demonstrating value. Really, really powerful. There's lots of like meal delivery companies. I think that, Amazon Prime and Netflix are often looked as a great example, but I think that's hard to kind of like relate to. But I think like thinking from like an app or membership standpoint, like there's a lot of, I think software is farther ahead in like understanding subscription engagement than it is from like other typical direct to consumer businesses. So you could look at quite a few of those. HubSpot is probably like, that's a software that I really love. And although I'm annoyed sometimes at all the different pricing tiers, like they're very, very good at like understanding like the one feature you need that you're going to pay another $100 a month for, that I would look at. And I got to check out Calm from Garen's example, but those would be some. Crunch Labs is a subscription box. So I most of my work is with like supplements and stuff like that. So it's not like boxes, but I really love Crunch Labs as well, because what they do and what BattleBox is doing and what I think the best subscription brands are doing is they're leveraging content in a big way. Crunch Labs started as content from their founder, and then they launched a box through it, but they're still always trying to think through like, what more can I make of this? What more can I make of this? What more can I offer? And so that's another like thing to think about. Like if you're selling like if your membership is a dog walking service, for example, just the most simple of things, like, and you're trying to get people to subscribe to your dog walking service, like, okay, what other things could I add of value? Should I add like grooming? Should I add like, okay, not dog walking, but I'm just going to play with your dog for 20 minutes and throw a ball around or something like that? Like, there's like thinking of like all the different ways you can engage, or can I create content, like a little video around like the do's and don'ts of dog walking. And so people understand more about your dog. Like, this is why your dog is doing this, like content like scales incredibly well. And so being able to build out content as an offering, because again, it always comes back to there's a founder somewhere who's an incredible expert, and that drove them to make the decision to launch this app or product. I'd love to learn more about what they know and why, and include that as an offering. Because again, it's like a really cheap way. If you think about like, instead of 10% off, don't give the 10% off, get anybody that subscribes gets access to the content. And that's a great way to like get more value back from customers and something you can do at scale.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples, it was a service I used for probably 2 years, was Universal Yums, where they would it was a monthly box where it was a selection of snacks from a different country around the world.
Yeah.
And it was really, really cool. And my kid, and you talked about content, like they had a booklet that was like, here's all the snacks, and there's like history of the country, a little thing of a passport, and like, which snacks did you like? Which snacks did you not like? And the only reason I gave it up is at some point, like we'd get excited for the first day, and then I would be stuck eating all the snacks because I don't like things to go to waste. And my kids would be like, all right, and they'd move on. So
yeah, it's hard with surprise and delight if people don't use it all the time. Yeah.
Right. But what they did do, you talked a little bit about product extension as well, as they started just as the boxes. And I'm sitting there going, at some point they got to sell these, because there's some of these snacks that are really, really good. And I don't know where to find them. And then eventually they started a shop where they go, oh, you want to buy what's in the box on its own? So I'd have these huge boxes with like 50 bags of some crazy potato chip or something because it was so good. I'm like, this is brilliant. So there you go.
That's perfect.
Those are some great examples. Let's take the converse of that, right? Aside from the biggest or most established brands, most of the subscription services or products that we see tend to be these emerging businesses or startups. I have to imagine their customer acquisition cost is incredibly high. It's a crowded landscape out there. It's becoming increasingly expensive to sort of project your voice into that. And the only way you can really sort of combat that on a balance sheet is to drive folks to retention and that longer lifetime customer value. What are some of the biggest mistakes, without calling anyone out maybe specifically, but what are some of the biggest common mistakes you see some of these subscription businesses making with regard to their marketing, their setup, their delivery, etc.?
Yeah, I'll call out gym memberships to start, because it's incredibly difficult to cancel a gym, right? But their whole model is based off of the fact they're trying to get you in there and forget, like Scott was bringing up. So that's definitely a no-no. I think anytime you're worried about somebody, I would say anybody who's running a subscription business and there's a touch point where you're worried about somebody canceling, that is actually an opportunity to engage with them in a way that actually could drive retention and bottom line revenue in a very like profitable way, right? So just think of that as a mindset. I think the other thing is the problem is there's often an assumption that if I just get somebody onto a subscription, they'll be there for 6-7 months. So I see a lot of brands that are banking on that higher, like the higher lifetime value that comes with a subscription to offset their acquisition costs. And they have not modeled it. They have not explored like additional ways to try to get at that. So like, and as an example that I mean is like, say you're going to sell a coffee subscription and the coffee is $25. You get a big bag of coffee every month for $25, but your customer acquisition costs are like, $50. It's not really 2 orders to get that money back. It might be 3 or 3.5 because of the cost of the product and shipping and a lot of other factors. And so that's one mistake, is like not like thinking through like modeling that, like, can I do art? Because there are a lot of things you can do to get as close to profitability or more profitable on the first order, which I'm going to come back to. The second big mistake is just keeping it very, very simple. Like, so like say you're selling protein powder and the subscription offer is like 10% off. And so that's it. And so the problem is you get a lot of people who just want to take the discount and then they cancel right away. They aren't seeing any additional value. And so what I always harp on is like, I call it the offer, right? So this is like why somebody buys, but it's also what they get when they buy. Offers both of those things. And so one of the biggest mistakes I see across the board are brands not testing different types of offers. So if I'm selling like protein powder and I've been driving traffic, can I use a quiz or some other kind of opt-in to gather information from my paid traffic sources? Like, I would want to know if I'm selling protein powder, is this a weight loss? Is this meal supplement? Is this weight training? Is this endurance training? Is this doctor recommended? Like, what are the reasons for that? And if I start to notice out of my paid traffic that there's a really high like dependence on like meal supplement and weight loss, then I'm going to craft that product page to speak more strongly to that value proposition. And then I'm going to come up with other things I could include. I'm going to like test like a fun little drink mix that tastes like you're full, but it's 0 calorie. I'm going to include like a diet guide, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to build an offer around that, because that's going to be a lot more effective than 10% off the protein powder. You're speaking to somebody, you're driving tons of more value than what they think they're getting for the price. So testing around the offer, testing about what you give. And so like, if we want to go back to the gym membership, it's the same examples, like what other things could I do to enhance that? So they have other services, things there, but like, maybe you wanted to host a basketball league or something like that. So you're getting people to come in other ways. So you can start like trying to brainstorm other ideas and values.
Yeah, you kind of have to, right? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, yeah, I was gonna say the final thing is just thinking through, like, there's a lot of different ways to sell. So most people think like, I want a monthly subscription, right? And so like, and you get stuck in this mindset of like, I have a hard enough time getting somebody to opt into this, say the subscription's $50 a month. I have a hard enough time getting somebody to pick the subscription option instead of the one-time option. So I'm really going to struggle to get them to like prepay for a year or pay for 3 months up front kind of thing. But the truth is that those types of like approaches can greatly offset the cost of higher customer acquisition costs. So like the protein powder is an example. You could sell a bundle of 3 at like 20% off or 30% off if you subscribe to like a quarterly subscription. So now instead of like selling 1 bag of protein at $50, you're selling 3 bags of protein at like 120, including the discount. That's more revenue up front for you. And then it renews every 3 months, right? So there's just different approaches to think through, like prepaid, bundles, upsells is another really like missed opportunity. Some brands do it. There's plenty that don't, where you buy the protein powder and then you offer like, say that drink supplement I mentioned, or like another supplement or something that goes well with that for the intended outcome. Like you want to include that upsell option. And that's what gyms do as well, right? It's like you buy, here's this tier. Now we're going to try to get you to opt into like our fitness trainer. Hey, we're running this special, like get a free training session, because we're trying to get you to buy more, right? So thinking through like upsells and what other value add, like somebody like StreamYard's probably like running some kind of like mentorship or some kind of group or community where if you want to learn more about podcasting, like you can pay to have access to this extra stuff in addition to your subscription.
Yeah.
You hear that, StreamYard?
Yeah. No, it really makes a lot of sense. I mean, especially it's fine to discount to acquire, but you really have to back that up with value, right? You never want price to be the reason that people stay with you. I think we see a lot of that with regard to some of these meal prep subscriptions, right? They sort of 40 to 60% off your first box. And then when you lose that on the next one, the value proposition quickly seems upside down. It's hard to compete with some of the prices in grocery stores compared to the prices of some of these meal preps. So it makes sense.
Well, and I think there's that short-term, long-term view, right? Like if you're doing a 3-month thing, or like I'm actually actively with, it's an AI exercise app I've been trying, and I signed up for 6 months because it was 40% off. So it'll be like, based on what you do, we'll recommend exercises, and you can say, this is the equipment. I have a home gym in my garage. I'm like, this is the equipment I have. And they'll go, okay, cool. Use this. Really cool. It's actually really cool. I'm like, I'll pay for 6 months because it'll take me 6 months to get a rhythm going, because I'm terrible at exercise.
Well, there's an aspirational element.
Exactly.
That's the other thing is, like, if you have a subscription that has some kind of like life-changing element to it, like being able to show somebody what their life might be like at 6 months, like then they're going to, well, of course I'm going to use it for 6 months, right? Like for me, if I'm picking between the annual and monthly option, it's always comes down to, am I sure I'm going to use this? Because if I'm not sure, I'm going to pick the monthly. I don't care that it's more. But if I know I'm going to be using it in a year, then why wouldn't I buy the annual option? It just makes more sense.
Yeah.
In those instances, I find it's really critical to keep people focused on the desired outcome rather than the necessity of input. It's not about exercising; it's about what you want on the other side of that, right? This is why one of the reasons I feel like people give up their New Year's resolutions so quickly. It's they lose sight of the impact and the outcome, and they're really focusing on the seemingly burdensome task of having to exercise every single day, right? And you mentioned Dollar Shave Club. It's kind of the same thing. I'm more of a hairy, scroomy man myself, but hey. You also see the aspect of people canceling subscriptions because they have too much product on hand, right? And so it becomes sort of, again, driving that regular behavior, getting them to take that program adherence that not only delivers value to them, but keeps them primed for the next sort of delivery that's coming down the pipe very shortly.
And also selling to people based on what they want to use. Like the too much product is like one of the top reasons. And sometimes it's because, they're on a bad cadence. They're getting 2 bags of coffee every month. They really only need 2 bags of coffee every 3 months. So like there's an element of like marketing. That's where email can be so helpful, is like trying to communicate with them to say like, hey, do you have enough? Do you have too much? Like, here's how you make a change, trying to understand that. There's some data recently, like Recharge is the largest subscription app on Shopify, and they released a report around like the state of subscriptions every year. And one of the interesting facts on that was like enterprise level brands have a lower average order quality, lower average order value, and less frequent shipments, which is hard to do when you're early on because you're trying to get as much value and get people to buy as much as possible. But the idea is you mature into this system where you're trying to get everybody on there just to be happy. Like me as a Dollar Shave Club guy, I don't know if I'm an ideal customer because of like, I'm not buying a lot of stuff, but I'm sure from an LTV perspective, I'm pretty far up there, because even if I'm only buying every 2 or 3 months, I've been doing that for 7 years. Right. So that stuff can add up. So like thinking through like that relationship, like I would add too, it's like it does come down to sales funnels and like understanding like where you're going to position that offer. A lot of people are trying to get the subscription offer right away, but sometimes you want to enable some kind of free trial, or like, hey, we're gonna sell a one-time, like a brand I was talking to yesterday, Obvi, they sell collagen. Like their CMO is saying, I'm only focused on the initial purchase and making that profitable. And then I use email marketing and organic to do the subscription piece. And so there's a lot of different ways to approach it depending on how you want to build your business and how people are trying it. And you have to model all that out to understand like conversion rates and how many people are opting into things. But it doesn't always have to default to the subscription right away. There's different ways to engage and enable people so that they like it. But it is nice to get somebody on a subscription right away. It is.
What I'm hearing is don't be afraid to contact and ask questions.
That is 100%.
That's what I'm hearing. I mean, I worked at 1-800-Contacts for a while, and you talked about usage, right? Hey, you bought a 12-month supply of contacts. Are you going to make it last 18 months? Are you going to stretch them? Are you going to be a part-time wearer? Are you going to be a part-time coffee drinker in your example, right? So don't be afraid. People, it's
engagement.
There's too much email. There's too much email. It's like, there's not enough maybe. Email. There's not enough email. Thank you. I'm going to put that on a sign. Matt Holman says,
again, I like breaking up for people like this is, okay, how many emails do you actually open? Like from a brand? Do you open all the emails? Because if you went through and filtered by a brand that you like, you're going to see like maybe a lot of them. You missed tons of them. So if you think about it, like on a typical open rate, a good open rate is going to be like 30 or 40%. Like maybe it's better on newsletters and stuff, but a brand that gets 30 for 40% open rates is probably doing pretty well. Okay. So 1 in 3 of your list is opening that email. Out of that 1 in 3, how many are actually reading the email? That's a lot less. They quick read, scan, they're done. So you're talking about maybe you're getting 10 to 20% of your list to look at each email, maybe. So that means you could send 10 times as many emails. So if you want to try to get everybody to see it.
Well, and in my view, I come from a background where I looked at it and 40% of revenue came for people who didn't even open the email. No. They just saw the email in the inbox and went, oh, let me go do that right now.
That's amazing.
So you got to look at that data. Yeah, I did a whole presentation on why you should look at that data a couple of years ago, because it's that branding value that, hey, your bill is due. You may not open the email, but you'll go pay your bill. Email worked.
That's a good point. So, I like that one too, because that does that's got me sometimes. It's like, I have a recent doctor's visit, and it's like I get an email from him. I'm like, oh yeah, crap. Go log into the portal.
Exactly. See, did the email work? Yeah, it worked.
I didn't even have to open it. Cool.
Oh man, well we could go on for another hour, but I think this is a good stopping point. I think, Matt, you and I officially met like, I don't know, 9 months ago. We've been back and forth chatting for a long time. I got introduced to you mentioned a little earlier, the Commerce Catalyst community. I believe it's based here, but I think it's expanded quite a bit, even outside of the state of Utah. I'm a big believer in community. So why don't you tell those folks listening and watching a bit more about what Commerce Catalyst is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Commerce Catalyst started out as I was a solo marketer at QPilot, small company, and Sometimes I just get tired or frustrated of, if I need to evaluate a tool, I'm going on Google or YouTube, and that is so much like SEO based. It's not necessarily like the real tool. So like being able to sit in a room with other people that, if I ask like, hey, what's a good CRM tool? What's a good landing page builder? Like, what do you guys use to scrape LinkedIn profiles? And then you get immediate feedback, good pros and cons. And so that's like the whole genesis of like what started. And so originally it was called like Marketers Unite, and then for a while it was part of Sharehouse, and then now Commerce Catalyst is kind of on its own. It's very much like, if you're in our Slack is close to 900 members, and people are asking questions around, hey, does anybody know somebody who can help with like cross-border like fulfillment? Does anybody have a contractor for landing page design? Like, hey, my niece just graduated from college, or people posting about jobs or looking for jobs. And so it's very much like that's the whole spirit of the community, is like people go there, ask questions. So it's a very engaged Slack group. We get anywhere from at least a couple of posts, if not 10 to 20 a day, with different things. So, and then we do events. We do lunch and learn stuff here in Utah. Last September, Scott, you were at our Catalyst 23 event, and I've started planning our Catalyst 24 event. That's going to be downtown this year as well in September. Just really trying to, that's how I've learned. And so like when we run events, like it's very much, we try to go into the weeds as much as possible. The last thing I want somebody to say on a panel is like, oh, just go start an email list. It's like, no. Explain to me the lead magnet you used. What automation tool we're using. Break down the offers. Okay, did that work? What worked and what didn't work, right? That's the kind of content that I want and I need, because the last thing you need is like to hear from the head of Google how they leveraged like their, machine learning AI algorithm and their $10 billion in ad budget to launch a new product. Like, cool. How did you
good job with deep pockets, man.
Good job with all that expertise and the top minds in the world. Like, I'm not that guy. I'm me and two other people, or it's just me or something like that. So it's very much like what Commerce Catalyst is trying to enable.
And where can people find out more about you and Subscription Prescription?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to thesubscriptiondoc.com. You can go to ccatalyst.co, or you can just look me up on LinkedIn, Matthew Holman, subscription, and I'll come right up. I've got links to both the community, my newsletter, and everything in there as well. Newsletter, podcast, consulting. I'm working on a course right now and all kinds of stuff. Just trying to create more content, but also that will make money, like we all are.
Busy guy. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Matt. And thanks to you, our listeners and watchers, for tuning in. If you'd like to learn more about InboxArmy, check us out, InboxArmy.com. Until next time, be safe and be well.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.